Cool. So welcome to the next episode of Next Creators. Today we have Zeitwarp. Zeitwarp is a semi-pseudonymous Gen X garage artist and music hacker based in Cambridge, UK, releasing conceptual crypto art exclusively on the NEAR blockchain. His artwork is entirely conceptual, with overarching themes of paradox, transience, significance, obsolescence, and transformation. His work mainly in audiovisual MP4 sound and visionscapes that combine his music graffiti paintings, photography, and physical installations and sculpture with digital manipulation and sound production. Essentially, they are soundtracked, dynamic digital collages of physical items. Music, and in particular the technology, culture, and economy of music, is often the motif to communicate these themes. His work has been featured at a number of exhibitions, both in the physical and virtual world, including a solo wall gallery at the NEAR NFT Lounge at Bitcoin Miami in June 2021. Thank you for coming today.
Yeah, hi Sasha. Thank you for the intro. That's great.
So maybe we can start with where also did you grow up?
I was born in London in some time ago in the 1960s, and I've sort of been heading east and north since then, and I'm now just near Cambridge. But I've not moved too much around. I've done a lot of different things, but I've not moved around too much.
Got it. And when did you encounter like Web3 technology?
I came across Bitcoin in 2014, January, February 2014. And I was a futures trader in the 1990s, late 80s, and most of the 1990s, and so I was pretty much interested in any kind of esoteric financial speculation. And although I'd heard of Bitcoin before 2014, I never really dove in and had a look at it. And I'd come to the end of a business that I was doing at the time, and was scratching around and reading and spending a bit of time finding out what am I going to do next. And I think it was just shortly after the capital controls were introduced in Cyprus, and Bitcoin had its first real pump from sort of $30 up to about 1,000. So I started getting pretty interested in it, and that was my entry point. And I probably would have become a full-time Bitcoin maxi if it hadn't been for the Mt. Gox hack about a month or so later, which pretty much snapped the elastic of my credibility at the time. And I kind of just decided to, well, I was spending a bit of time trying to build various apps, not coding perspective, but by combining with coders in Bitcoin that summer. And it kind of the Mt. Gox thing pretty much put it on the back burner for me again, and I drifted away for a couple of years until we reached 2017 in the ICO craze. But that 2014 was my entry point.
And so what happened since the ICO craze and encountering NEAR?
Well, yeah, life, I think there's a line in the Matrix that life is not without a sense of irony. I came across, so I was spending, the ICO craze kind of dragged me back in just because it was, Bitcoin was making all-time highs again, and obviously the launch of ETH. And I came across CryptoKitties, and I just thought, what the, if I'm going to swear, what the fuck is this? But WTF is this? And it kind of, the credibility elastic snapped for me, and I thought, is this what Ethereum's all about? Is this the whole point? And given the fact that I was just about, I was probably a year away from becoming a full-time artist in my own right in the physical world, it's kind of ironic that I basically walked away from digital art because I was struggling to understand digital scarcity in 2017. And it really was only in 2020 that the second half of 2020 that I basically started really beginning to understand it. And in many respects, that's what led me to Near Protocol, because I was watching a video by Robin Schmidt at the Defiant. I think he filmed it around October. And it was talking about NFTs and he was, his obviously background as a movie maker. He was talking about the artistic merit or otherwise of various NFT projects, and the last 15 minutes of the interview, a guy called Nate Geyer came on and was being interviewed about how he was tearing down Mint-based on Ethereum and rewriting it on Near Protocol from scratch. And I kind of just thought, well, this sounds pretty good. This is interesting. And I went and looked at Near Protocol probably early January, and eventually I think I opened my mainnet wallet in the beginning of February 2021, and I've been there ever since. Really, I've not minted anything anywhere else. I just kind of it suits me. I like the people. I love the technology. The real hook that got me involved was the fact that it was carbon neutral, and Yesin Shegs reached out to me through Carolyn, and about the South Pole Global official accreditation, and that's really what got my interest because, from a generational perspective, people my age have lived through the causes of the climate crisis and been part of it without knowing a lot about it. And so when I was deciding to get into NFTs and more importantly crypto art, I was looking for a carbon neutral solution, and it kind of just everything fell into place so it was Nate Guy's interview with Robin that kind of got me looking at it, and then the more I found, the more I liked, and that's not changed. Yeah, everything about Near still stands out for me.
And how do you think about the state of art these days on Near? There are a couple marketplaces, obviously. Nate's Mint-based, there is Paras, there are a couple new ones launching, like Endemic on Aurora, then we'll go native on Near. I definitely heard in the last 3 to 4 weeks, 4 projects claiming to be Paras killer, so there is that too. So what changed since those times?
Yeah, they're queuing up. The Paris killers are queuing up. There are a lot, and a lot of them are being spun out of or coded out of the NFT projects. I mean, art is such a wide-ranging term in real life, and it's such a, that it mirrors itself in Web3 and on Near Protocol. What we do have is obviously a very successful 6 months of PFP NFT projects and communities utility, and we really have that's really sort of turbocharged the growth of the NFT market on Near. In terms of generative art, we're seeing some, there's a guy called Everett who's very well involved in a lot of the PFP communities, and him and a guy called Marco are doing generative one-of-ones, which are, they've seen some success. We are we're less further down the road in terms of probably my area of expertise or my area of practice, which is this conceptual crypto art. The idea of an art of ideas or an art of questions, where you're basically trying to communicate something probably subjective. In fact, it is. I can talk about my work all day, but it's you're trying to communicate a subjective thought process in an objective manner that you're trying to basically. The art is the superficial art is really not the most important thing. The message that you're trying to represent through that art is the important thing. I guess that would be the definition of conceptual art. And whereas on ETH you have things like super rare, and on Solana you have some one-of-one art that's found a market, we've yet really to break that open on Near. I'm pretty lucky. I'm one of the fortunate ones that has collectors and sells some work. But then again, I don't see many people doing what I'm doing on Near either. Endemic, you mentioned, is a good example, because Endemic very much felt on Aurora, very much felt like they were going to reach out and with this kind of one-of-one conceptual super rare like model, and that's still their ambition, and they seem like they seem good people with a great idea. But the market does drive towards these collectible series, and that's really, they published a top 10 figure of sales, and it was all collectibles, many of which were on Paris, many of which didn't have community or utility. It's going to take some time, but we are slowly building it.
Hmm. And what do you think about those NFT collectors? Like, if the market is kind of favoring going towards those, do you think we're just not in a point in time when like really like people who like appreciate art are here, or is it like too rude of a way to to say it? Like PFP collections also art, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah. I'm never going to gatekeep anybody. I've just described myself as an outsider artist, and the classic definition of that is somebody who was not formally trained, didn't do their 3 years at art school. Outsider art are people who are literally outside of the formal in real life art establishment. So yeah, graphic art. I believe that the PFP collections are fantastic examples of graphic art, and obviously Sam Toshi is you know is my favorite graphic artist on NEAR, and he's recently launched his the collection with NEAR Hub, and you have to take your hat off. It's great work. It's a different type of work, but all these types of things are different types of art. We have landscape art, digital art, which is some of it's AI generative, some of it's coded. We have all sorts of different types of art, but the truth of the matter is that the real strength in the market is in these PFP NFT collections. I think Bored Ape changed everything a year ago, and on NEAR, it's certainly the case that these are the dominant drivers of the market. That's why people like them, and they are speculative, but they are also community vehicles. They offer some utility, and they are under the umbrella of art, certainly. But I think it's more what's missing is we've yet to really establish this kind of one of one conceptual art market on NEAR. The generative guys are doing great. As I said, I've name checked Everett and Marco already, and Marco's collection, the Starry Nights, are really are going someplace. And they have high floor prices, and so that's an interesting start for me. My own work is very, very time consuming. I'm not a regular minter, so I tend to drop stuff pretty rarely. I don't have a lot for sale at any one time, so I'm not typical of really where the art market is on NEAR, but it is getting bigger all the time, and people are becoming more attracted to it and more interested in it. But we've yet to see really aggressive collecting of that kind of work. You sell in batches periodically.
Hmm. And maybe we can talk then about your work as well. So, like, what was your initial work on NEAR, and how did it evolve since then?
Yeah, it's an interesting point actually, because this it encapsulates one of the great things about Web3 to me, and crypto art. I, this the I was involved in this business that was making audiovisual furniture, and I met a lot of people with record collections and expensive stereos, and we had a lot of customers in this sort of world. So when I started painting music graffiti paintings, I've always, I've been practicing art as a hobby for 25 years, and I started painting these kind of street art symbolic paintings, and I had a market for them, and they were interesting, but they're an art of process in the sense that it's a musical idea encapsulated in a painting. And I was fortunate. I'd sold these paintings. I still sell them, and I'm trying to actually figure out the way at the moment. I'm working on a way to fractionalize them and bring them into Web3 and NFTs. However, what really changed for me with entering the crypto art world was the fact that I felt, I use the phrase with AVB about how the Berlin Wall came down, which is a reference. Obviously, I'm showing my age with to certain people, but the idea was that there was no gatekeeping again. I could actually think about the things I've been thinking about for 30 years about the nature of existence, my existence, and externally the nature of the world, and the things you observe. And I'm fascinated by paradox and inconsistency and juxtaposition. I was able to actually think about that side of my work. And so when I first got involved in NEAR, I kind of decided I was going to give full rein to this art, this philosophical art, if you like, the idea that was going to represent my thought process. And I'd always felt excluded from that kind of work, A, by the market, but B, by being an outsider artist in real life. And because there are so many hurdles you have to overcome to have work that is allowed to be conceptual, and that's the great thing, in crypto art, is there's nobody saying you can't do this, or that it's not valid, or you have no right to do it. It was an incredibly, I'm trying to think of the word. It was a transformational moment for me to think, hang on a second, I don't have to be restricted to this art of process, which is interesting, and I find the transformation interesting between music and art. I can actually give full vent and go and explore any particular thing that I want to do. And I don't need a gallery to put it on the wall. In the same way that Web 2 opened up some freedoms, allowing you to put your own website up and sell your own work, I could literally mint what I wanted, how I wanted, when I wanted, and have control of the process that gets you to market. And that was a pretty liberating thing, that was a big game changer for me. I was very much in a honeymoon period when I first got onto NEAR, thinking I can get my own smart contract on Mintbase. I'm in total control of the process. And that's a message I would say to people who are interested about getting in Web3, who feel in any way restricted by an in real life or Web2 market. You can get in front of people and do exactly what you want. Of course, you need to market yourself. Of course, you need to build a community of collectors around you. And these are things that I don't necessarily find easy. But the opportunity is there.
Yeah, and it reminds me of the conversation actually with Satoshi, who you mentioned earlier. He would go to San Diego for Comic-Con many, many years and trying to get this one particular person to agree that this is good enough to be put on a large distribution. And it was all about going there and convincing this guy. And now it's like, you don't need to convince anyone. Well, you need to build this community and your own brand in a way, but there is no guy deciding for you to keep you away from this, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it, Sasha. I think I remember writing a long thread in and around when I finally really understood this in January, February last year, writing a long thread, and I think I finished it with "the market will decide." And rather than someone saying to you your work isn't good enough, or you don't deserve the chance, or I can't sell it, the market will decide. It may be up to you to build the market yourself. In fact, of course it is. But ultimately, the market will decide. And even then, it doesn't mean that you can't do it. You can still do exactly what you want.
Mm-hmm. And let's maybe go deeper into your work. So what were the series that you started with? Maybe we can talk about Nostalgia Show, Glitch Breaks, some of the things, like evolution of your thought and how it contributed to the art you're producing.
Okay. Nostalgia Show is something that's been going on for probably 5 years. It represents a subjective paradox in me, and as well as something I'd observed in the wider world. And it's interesting. There's a parallel into Web3 or into PFP NFTs as well. The idea that we all to a certain extent live in the past. It's a part of human nature, and that's fine. I do think that there is a risk of cultural arrested development as well as emotional arrested development through consigning yourself entirely to the past. And where there are dangers with this are in people who have retrograde ideas about going back in time to how things were ostensibly better for them. And interestingly, in politics, again, I view it as an interesting paradox rather than a partisan thing. We had the Brexit movement in 2016 here, and there was a lot of people thinking about turning Britain back into Great Britain. And At the same time, in the States, the Make America Great Again movement, it makes us, there's an inherent message in that that says about turning something back to how it was. And what got my attention was that I've got, I'm in my mid 50s. I've got boom boxes, I've got Walkmans, they're strewn around my house. And I find them really interesting, fascinating. And I'd have a friend who'd come round and he'd say, "Oh, cool boombox or cool Walkman. What have you got recently? I love it." And then just rant about people basically trying to turn the clock back to a time that doesn't exist anymore. And I was thinking, well, there's an interesting paradox there amongst this guy's thought process that he's at one point admiring these icons of nostalgia, and at the same point bemoaning the fact that some people want to turn the clock back. And to someone with my eye and ear and thought process, that was interesting. And I began to think, well, does nostalgia need to come with a warning for people? In the same way that alcohol and cigarettes and other pleasures come with a warning. And so I started working on this idea of wrapping physical items in hazard warning tape, and then using my music graffiti paintings as a background to them, and creating these kind of digital stems to build up from physical work, from physical pieces, build these digital stems to then reassemble them into a mix, a video mix. And it's an interesting thing because there's so many different things you can do with it, and there's so many things. I've got a reel-to-reel machine I'm working on at the moment, an instant camera, and people's reaction to the technology is great. I love it. I remember those. And what I'm trying to say is that there's also, we should be looking forward. We can't go backwards. By all means, remodel the past. By all means, be informed by it, but don't try to recreate it, or don't get stuck in it. And on a personal level, I play bass guitar in a tribute band that's based on bands that were playing in the 70s and 80s. And this is what they call in the UK a mod band. And I go to these things and these gigs we play at, and there's full of people who are basically, the idea of modernism and looking forward has become actually a backwards looking phenomenon where people look back and sort of try to recreate the 1960s or the late 70s and not actually engaging with the present. And I find that fascinating. So that's the nostalgia show, is that essentially that. And where the crossover with Web3 is obviously something like CryptoPunks is classic 8-bit graphics, and everyone loves pixelated 8-bit graphics in these PFP NFT collections. And of course, here we are at the cutting edge of new technology in Web3, where there's incredible things happening every day and being built. And it's potentially a way to this kind of post-scarcity utopia. I've always seen technology as ultimately the gateway to the dream of a post-scarcity utopia, and it probably is a dream. That's what utopias are. And yet we have an obsession with 8-bit graphics at the same time. And once again, it seems an interesting juxtaposition for me. So that's the nostalgia show, is essentially that. It's a series of works that draw attention to the fact that nostalgia has a dark side, downside, or potential ramifications for people who wish to go forward with their lives and actually engage with the future by acting in the present. So that's a fairly long description, but that essentially is what it's about.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's something I've thought about for a while. You asked about glitch breaks. The glitch breaks series is less a conceptual series. It's more an art of process, and that's really about finding a way to replicate what I was doing with my music graffiti paintings in a digital environment. And I'm working at the moment on a way of actually fractionalizing a painting using the glitch breaks, and that's my main focus this last couple of weeks. I'm hoping to launch something in the next week, a Medium article explaining what's going on. But essentially the idea is that each painting is fractionalized into 9 separate parts, and then they're digitally manipulated, and those NFTs then own the painting and any derivative works thereof the painting. And I'm trying to actually bring together many different elements of NEAR in that. So the base, the 9 NFTs for each painting would be minted and sold on Paris or one of the Paris killers that are that are coming down the track. The derivative work will be, and the painting itself will be both minted on Mintbase on my smart contract store, with a physical redeemer on the painting itself. The auction, the new secondary market, will be where I'll be auctioning off the derivative parts. I think the first one is next Tuesday, May the 17th. I don't know when this is going out. And but interestingly, what I'm going to do is basically mint on Mintbase with a wallet that will be owned by the 9 NFTs. That were the 9 fractionalized NFTs, and so they're going to be basically joint owners of the painting with me and joint beneficiaries. And I really would like to have spun it up on Astra DAO as well, but it seems very hard to run a DAO for just nine tokens or 9 owners. It's something I might yet do, and I was speaking to Jordan about Astra DAO. But the idea is to bring many different facets of NEAR together in one project on Glitch Breaks. And the issue for me is trying to think about community, because I'm not a natural community builder. I'm very much a kind of used to broadcasting and rather than networking. And that's a challenge. I mean, it's why obviously I do things like this and the AVB podcast to try and let people know what I'm doing and understand where I'm coming from. But Glitch Breaks should be pretty interesting. The other one I'm trying to get involved in it is 3XR, Luis's virtual gallery minting. And as soon as I can, if it's interoperable with Paris, as soon as I can mint some of the Paris NFTs on there, then the gallery becomes something that can be minted in its own right. And that we'll see how it goes. But at the moment, it's quite interesting.
That's awesome. And maybe for listeners who don't know anything about 3XR, that's pretty much like a virtual gallery, correct?
Yeah. Luis at Mintbase, one of the devs, has been involved as long as I've been aware of it. He has spun up this kind of virtual gallery app where you can load your Mintbase NFTs. I mean, I think the plan is to have all NEAR NFTs in there. And you can mint the gallery. It's a virtual gallery. You can walk around and inspect them, but you mint it itself as an NFT, which you can then sell. And the owners of the tokens and the royalties that are all programmed in on Mintbase all get a split of whatever the gallery is sold for. So it's a way of selling a collection of work. Again, some of the PFP NFT collections should really be looking at 3XR. It's very interesting. And I believe he's got a new, he's looking to do something called NEAR Cribs as well, which is going, I don't know an awful lot about it because they're teasing it out, but it looks like some kind of PFP NFT collection based around 3XR.
That's super interesting. And you also mentioned the auction, so that's a new way to also kind of participate in the market, right?
Yeah, I mean the auction is so Chloe the dev and Monish, the people I know from there, they have a weekly call on a Friday, and they're basically making a NEAR-wide secondary auction facility, so you can basically take any NFT you own and put it up for auction on the auction. They've just went to mainnet last Friday. You have to get a token from them, which is actually a part. Well, I actually made the NFT for the token myself. Chloe asked me to do it, and it's part based on one of my glitch breaks and also the auction's logo. But at the moment, it's not audio-visual work. They have not got audio sorted yet. It's basically it's GIFs and JPEGs, PNGs. But the idea is that you will be able to take any NFT you own or have created anywhere off Mintbase or Paris or even Pluminite, or one of the I could shout out to the Paris killers again. One of the new markets, new platforms, and you'll be able to auction it on the auction.
And I wonder how do you think these days about physical spaces, because you participate in a couple, right, with Mintbase and also in Lisbon for Aros Studios. So how do you think about physical spaces and their place in Web3 going forward?
Yeah, I think they've got a place. We don't need physical spaces in physical galleries in Web3 or physical meetups. But I think, again, there's a discussion, a point AVB might have made, or maybe it's Matt Lockyer, I'm not sure, about how meeting up with people at the conferences is so valuable, even though the actual stuff that happens, that's all the presentations on stage, all the supposed alpha at conferences is largely not worth much at all. But the actual meeting is incredibly valuable, and I missed NearCon last year. I couldn't travel, and I was really upset not to make it because that would have been the first NearCon in Lisbon would have been fantastic to attend, and I was really looking forward to it. I couldn't make it, but so Aroth in studios in Lisbon, they're obviously got they're a physical studio space that's basically embracing Web3 as a way forward, as a parallel way forward for them. And I like physical spaces as well. I think they're interesting. We don't need them for Web3 to succeed. But I think it's interesting. I think both on the conference basis for meeting people and on the exhibition spaces as well. I like them. I mean, the seeing your work in digital format in a physical space, I still like seeing that, and I think the connections you make are worthwhile.
Yeah, and it's interesting connection to kind of like it's almost like physical portal into this new markets, like Web3 markets. Because I met somebody from physical gallery here in San Francisco. They have in a little Italy, North Beach, they have a gallery, and they were like really excited about doing Web3 art. Showing theirs, and I heard the same actually from somebody in Norway. They're like really excited as well. So it seems like it's almost like the traditional galleries meeting the new markets, new buyers of the new art. It's kind of like interesting.
Yeah, well, that's right. Digital art is not new in itself. It's been, in the same way that, the generative, computer-coded generative art is not in any way new. I have a couple of old computers which I'm going to be using for the Nostalgia show, which have random pixel generators. But what is interesting is, is seeing these works in a physical gallery. And there's a place in Chicago called I'm Not Art that started as a virtual gallery on CryptoVoxels on a weekly basis, and then became a physical gallery. And basically showing off Web3 works, and I think the point I was intending to make was that NFTs are just the medium. I mean, they're a fantastic medium for managing, selling, distributing art of all types, but they really are just the medium. And the art itself is the important thing. And if you go to a physical gallery and see a really mind-blowing piece of digital art on a screen, that's going to be the future. We're going to be used to that, and I welcome it.
Yeah, it's amazing. I wonder also, maybe we can touch on some people you collaborate the most in ecosystem. Who are some of the people you like either collaborate or spend a lot of time with? I know another piece we didn't discuss is like NEAR Hub. Maybe that's where you also hang out quite a bit. So how do you think about the people side of it?
Yeah, I said earlier, I'm not a natural networker. I've been on my own in business, and for since about 1990. I had one job in the 80s, and you know, I've not, I said I'm not a natural network. I'm not a real community-driven person. I mean, I think the nature of somebody who's a conceptual artist is they spend a lot of time inside their head, and it's always a challenge to think, okay, I actually have got to tell people what I'm doing beyond actually just showing them. But the point I'm making is that I've actually been, charmed is probably the right word, by the NEAR ecosystem. The support initially that I got from Vandal, who invited me onto the council at NXM, and Chloe, the dev, who was running the Create Base guild with Lenara. The support that I got from them and the encouragement and to get involved and be involved really, it's not my natural way of conducting myself, but I really really enjoyed it, and I made, over the course of 2021, I made some good, I felt like I made some good friends. That's why I'd like to have gone to NearCon, to physically meet a lot of them, and Carolyn, Nate at Mint Base as well. They've been great, and Samtoshi, Jeff, who I met through in the summer last year with a group of people at AVB, and I can be quite cynical about things like this, and it's been really interesting, refreshing, and I've really enjoyed it. And I describe these people as my friends my friends in real life who are my age, because I am my age. And they're always a bit surprised. They say, "But you haven't met any of these people." I say, "Yeah, I know, but I spend a lot of time with them, and it's just you feel like you get to know them." So it's been quite an eye opener for me, and I've really enjoyed the support. I mean, Near Hub, obviously. If we want to move on to discussing that, Jeff, I think Vandal actually got me interested in Near Hub because he was talking to them, and I met Jeff and Samtoshi, and I think Chloe there as well. And they're great people. They're just so positive, and looking to help out. I mean, Jeff's been building me a space. This Radio Zeitwarp space, which is effectively an abandoned oil rig, because I always wanted a pirate radio station. And the idea behind Radio Zeitwarp was that it would be somewhere for me to broadcast in a Web3 way. Maybe not as a pure radio station, but to be able to hold events for conceptual artists, musicians, people doing something that's a bit non-mainstream creatively. And it's an exhibition space downstairs, and upstairs it looks like an oil rig. And it's still a work in progress, but we're getting close to getting it out there. I was having a look around yesterday and speaking to Jeff Gold this week about some things that we can do with it. And I'm looking forward to getting people in there and to basically encouraging other people to use it for their own exhibitions and their own events.
That's really cool. Maybe you can talk a bit about the future too. What are some of your plans going forward?
Yeah, well, it's I said I've been near exclusive since I started on February a year ago, and I can't see that I'm going to be going anywhere else. I glitch breaks the roadmap, for want of a better phrase, because that's the phrase that we have to use. The glitch breaks roadmap is, I finished it today, and it looks like it's 2 years before I actually finish releasing all the work. So there's not going to be a one FOMO drop where everyone has to try and grab them in 1 minute. So that's a 2-year program that I've basically finished laying out today, because my work takes a long time. And it's very manual. That's I can't work any quicker than that and do anything else. The Nostalgia Show will be carry on going at a rate of about 1 piece a month. And this summer I'm hoping to, my planning to start a new series called The Significance Parade, which is really looking at this idea of community that we were just talking about. And it touches on the idea of attachment and significance to large movements, brands, communities, and how people are looking for significance in their life. And some of it was informed by the Society of the Spectacle, which was the Guy Debord philosophical work as well. And really, again, it's something that got my attention. The communities are. I've seen a definition of a DAO where it was something like a community with a bank account, and I see a community as a group of people coming together for a common aim, but out of self-interest. And I know that, again, it sounds cynical, but that's the thing that interests me, is that people do come in for a communal gain, but really it will be. What I find interesting is their motivation is probably self-interest at some point. You just have to dig deep enough to find it. And community and with politics, community and communism are two interesting ideas, because in Web3 we have everyone's very much against the idea of of communism or socialism and these sort of things. No, no, not everyone. That's an unfair point. I'd probably like to rephrase that. There is an understanding that socialism and communism, while utopian ideals, don't work and can't work. And yet, I do feel we aspire in the same way to this utopia of DAOs and utopia of communities, where everyone is trying to help each other out. So I think there's something interesting around community. I've not figured it out yet exactly what angle I'm coming at, but it's within this context of people looking for significance in their life by attaching themselves to things that are larger than them, albeit brands, movements, football clubs, whatever. So that's really my thought process over the summer, to try and deliver some work and find a way of communicating the idea that I think there's a bit of a paradox at the heart of communities and significance.
Hmm. That's super interesting. It seems like a work in progress, right?
Yeah, it's a thought process in progress as much as a work in progress. But I've kind of got it sketched out as a mind map of the various dimensions and that I want to look at. And it's people coalesce around these large scale movements, whether they're festivals or both online and in real life. And I'm just looking at some of the motivation around that, and again, as always with some of the potential downsides or inconsistencies around the thinking of it. And you know the actual the way that the work is going to find aesthetically work out. I mean, I said at the beginning, my work is really concept first, aesthetics follow. The aesthetics have to inform the concept and represent it, otherwise it's not conceptual art. It's just they're two unrelated things. And I have some ideas about it, but I'm really trying to nail down the aesthetic at the moment rather than the thought process. I'm sort of getting there with that.
Hmm. I was wondering also, where do you take inspiration, be it people, art, music, books, other places?
Yeah, I guess everybody does take inspiration from places. I like to think of a lot of my inspiration is my own original thought process. I do think my work is pretty original. I don't think there's anything much like it anywhere in Web3, and I don't think there's a lot of people thinking where I'm thinking. However, we are all informed by things that we come across. That's part of the process of filtering from reality. And in terms of things that inspire me, I've often quoted the David Bowie quote about aging being the extraordinary process where you eventually become the person you always should have been. And I think that's an inspiration to me. Bowie's music was an inspiration in his process. The fact that he was constantly trying to see what was new out there and interesting. The other thing, what else is another key part of my, something that inspired me was coming across Robert Pirsig's book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I came across that probably 25 years ago, and they introduced me to the concept, the metaphysics of quality, and the idea that you're trying to do the best thing that you possibly can do, or you should be trying to do the best thing you can possibly do at any time when you're trying to do something. You should be aspiring to perfection, and obviously that's an interesting point because it's a bit like utopia. You're never really going to get there, but I liked a lot of the ideas of that, and that certainly informed a lot of my thinking about my work and also about my career. I've done a lot of different things, and eventually, following the lines of the Bowie quote, I drifted to the thing that I really wanted to do, which was to basically replicate my philosophical, subjective thought process in an aesthetic, audio-visual manner as conceptual art.
I'm wondering also for your friends in the physical world, in UK and other places, do they get curious about Web3, or like what's the?
Yeah, no, yeah. Oh, look, we've all been there. I mean, I guess it's probably more so for me, but one of those explanations where you when you start, you know it's going to be an hour of of misunderstanding or it's an interesting idea actually. I have one friend who is very open to trying to understand what I'm doing, and but other people it just again I guess it fails that credibility test I was thinking about earlier with myself. Um, so people my age, I talk to them, they find it interesting, but they generally can't. It's too much to take in at the moment. I mean, as I said, I've worked on some of the more end of spectrum parts of the financial markets a long time ago. So something like Bitcoin is not, or Web3 cryptocurrencies is not, entirely new or bizarre to me. So I had an introduction to it. The Where it's probably interesting is in my son's generation, who are he's in his mid 20s and he's a jazz musician, and I've tried to get him interested in crypto, and he is interested, but it's almost like you either get in totally or you don't. I mean, he's released work as through Vandal's DAO Records as a music audio NFT, and we've recently did some fundraising through NXM to enable him to record a big band record, which will be coming out soon. Again, be minted, on the NXM Mint-based store. And but part of the issue, I think, is we all know this, crypto never sleeps. You never sleep in crypto. I think part of the problem is immersion. When you talk to other people about it, it's the fact that you have to dive in totally almost to the exclusion of everything else to really understand and immerse yourself in it to that extent that you can really appreciate what's going on and where the opportunities are. And then you end up spending too much time chasing things that you perhaps shouldn't. You need to have a narrow focus on what it is you're trying to achieve. But that as we all know, that's difficult as well.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, so the advice for somebody who is maybe looking from the outside would be just immerse yourself fully, and then you'll start kind of connecting the dots.
Yeah, I think this advice has been given by many people, but Twitter's a good place to start. There's toxic as it can be. There's a lot of free education on Twitter. There's a lot of groups in Telegram you can join. There's a lot of Discords you can go in on the public parts of it, and you can learn so much. But you will have to spend some time to really understand it, understand the culture, understand what how almost any of it works. I mean, DeFi. I mean, I end up sort of thinking I'm just going to stake on Metapool because I can't keep track of everything. And so when, someone like me who's been around this area for some time comes to a conclusion like that, I can't imagine how bewildering it must be for a new entrant to come in. And you just have to spend the time. You just have to immerse yourself, spend the time, talk to people. And this is the importance of that community again. I'm going to say it again, but Vandal and Chloe, the dev, both were so welcoming when I first got involved that, it really did help me on that journey into understanding what was going on and what Web3 could do.
I was also wondering if there are any small improvements or small actions that led to really big difference in your journey.
I've mentioned earlier the Nate guy, coming across that interview. That was obviously a bit of a sliding doors moment because I may not have discovered NEAR Protocol at that time. And I might have ended up wandering down, the Ethereum NFT crypto art path and not be particularly committed to it because of the at the time there was this very much a sense of the ecological damage that was being done by NFTs. So that was a key moment. I mean, going back and thinking about it was more of a process. It's been a journey. I mean, I have someone like Sam Toshi we were talking about earlier has this wonderful graphic art talent. When I was 10 or 11, I wanted to be a comic book artist, and but I really have no representative art talent at all. I can't paint, I can't draw, and so I ended up being the writer in a comic book with a friend of mine at that age. He was a skilled artist. And I always had this feeling that art perhaps wasn't for me. And I remember my 14 being disinvited off the art course at school for two reasons. One, a distinct lack of representational talent, and two, the fact that I discovered Jackson Pollock several months earlier, and the idea that art didn't have to be representational, it could be process, or even more interestingly, ideas. So discovering Jackson Pollock, 6 months before I was due to be not kicked off, is too dramatic a word, but deselected from the art course at school. That was certainly an interesting moment, because I kind of went away thinking, I'm really interested in art. I've used the phrase before, the problem with the art establishment, it values 3 years at arts college over 30 years of thinking about art and the nature of existence. And so for me, I was kind of, that was a key moment, and I went away, and I didn't really touch art for probably another half dozen years. Returned to it in my 20s, and discovering street art was quite interesting at that point as well, because again, street art's more about the message than it is about the aesthetics. At least it was then, and it became incredibly visual and aesthetic after that. I mean, we're talking the really earliest days of tagging and things like that, and the tags were actually more important. So that was a moment, because I started using this kind of street art symbolism against these Jackson Pollock backgrounds, and that was really the basis of everything I've done up until crypto art, because my music graffiti paintings are that. They are effectively Jackson Pollock style backgrounds which are inspired by a musical thought or idea, with a music note painted in a kind of stencil, although it's hand painted, in a stenciled street art aesthetic. And so, look, if I used the key points for me, I would say are, if I had to draw a roadmap of what happened and how I got here, the Bowie quote about becoming what you should be is the key thing that's overseen the whole journey. I would say just realizing that I had no representational art talent at a very early age, followed by discovering that that wasn't actually that important if you wanted to make an art of ideas, an art of questions. That was the next thing. And then street art in the late 80s, that was an eye opener. And then I have to point at my discovery of Web3 and crypto art and the interview with Nate Guy, which I have referenced a few times today, but also if you see any other interviews I've done or things that I've been written about me, I always point to it and say that was the gateway for me. That was the moment of realization about digital scarcity. So I would pick those as the key milestones. Oh, and sorry, I've got to add one more, which you're going to have to edit in. Discovering Microsoft Paint as the free program on my Windows 95. Now that was that was a key moment, because this was basically that again. If you have very limited skills with your hands in terms of representational art, I was able to do things in MS Paint and then in Photoshop in 2003. I think the first Photoshop I bought was CS2 or something, and it might have been 2004, I can't remember. But the point is, finding out these digital platforms and tools existed, that was probably the next. So yeah, that was probably the next stepping stone.
Mm-hmm. And I wonder also, do you have any parting words of wisdom or advice for the listeners?
Yeah. Oh God. Buy low, sell high. No, I mean, words of wisdom. I try to avoid lecturing people about anything. I think if you want to if you're curious, if you're crypto curious, Web3 curious, get involved. But be aware that you do have to commit to it, and you do have to try hard, and you really have to spend some time. And anybody who's perhaps coming from my background, from my age group or whatever, I would say you do have to understand, you have to reach out to people, and you have to understand the importance of speaking and networking and getting on with people, and people are so willing to help, and you just have to spend the time doing that yourself and helping out other people. I mean, I ended up serving on a few DAO councils the last year, and yeah, that's work you do because you appreciate that there's you know, you've benefited from those people in the past, so you're helping out benefit a new, group of entrants into Web3 by sitting on those DAO councils. So yeah, get involved. I think that's as simple as that. Get involved and be open and willing to learn.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, for our listeners, what's the best place to find your work online? Is it Linktree or Twitter or somewhere else?
Yeah, my link tree. I mean, with the name like with a pseudonym like Zeitwarp, it's pretty easy to sort of reserve every kind of domain that you need and every kind of social media account that you need. So yeah, Linktree is just /Zeitwarp. Twitter @Zeitwarp. I don't really bother with Instagram, never have done. But yeah, and on Near Social, of course, @Zeitwarp. There's Near Socials and hopefully going to become quite an interesting place to spend time. I always post everything I do on Twitter onto Near Social, and that's something that people should be looking towards as well.
That's amazing. Well, thank you for coming today.
Oh, Sasha, thanks for having me. I've enjoyed it.